Hello, I'm Robert Kelly, and today on Record All Monsters, Invasion of Astro-Monster, International Title Confusion, and at last, Alien Invaders. Today's film is among the first Godzilla movies I saw as a young boy. Rewatching it for the show, I was surprised it held my attention then. This film has the least screen time for Godzilla in the entire franchise as of this writing. Out of the 94-minute runtime, the Big G is on screen for 5 minutes and 45 seconds. Roughly 6% of the movie features Godzilla footage. But it has some of the most effective and memorable imagery of the whole series, in my opinion. One of my first thoughts when I think of Godzilla is when the Zillions lift him out of the lake in a bubble and pull Rodan out of a mountain the same way. There's also the part where Rodan throws Godzilla at Ghidorah and they all tumble down the side of the cliff into the ocean together. This movie, for my money, has some of the best monster action. But finding this movie at the video store was an ordeal. It was one of my favorites to rent, but it seemed to have a different title whenever I was looking for it. I distinctly remember a VHS copy of that called it Godzilla vs. Monster X, though I can't find anyone else corroborating that title. I do know that Gamera vs. Jiger was initially called Gamera vs. Monster X when it aired on US TV, but I don't remember our Hollywood Video having any Gamera movies besides 1995's Gamera Guardian of the Universe. Most often, I found this movie under the title Godzilla vs. Monster Zero. The old Scimitar VHS cover is the one I remember getting the most often, with a very T-Rexy looking Godzilla fighting Ghidorah's 3 heads, entangled all in them against a purple marbled field, inside of a little gold box on a black background. Sometimes they had the Paramount VHS release, which had this opening.
Paramount is pleased to bring you our feature presentation.
Takes me back. Those tapes came in gorgeous illustrated covers, presenting the titles of each movie in a vaguely Asian font. I never rented a tape with this Monster Zero cover art, as the store I went to as a kid had the described above Scimitar release, and the old Paramount tape, which just had a still of Godzilla and Ghidorah fighting on Planet X. All this for a movie originally released in the US as Monster Zero, plain and simple. Now, if you were to go into the entertainment section of a Walmart or Target and ask for Godzilla vs. Monster Zero today, you would be met with confused looks and exclamations of puzzlement. And not just because you won't typically find Godzilla movies at either establishment. No, even if you typed it into Amazon, a query for Godzilla vs. Monster Zero would only bring up old VHS tapes, just like the ones I already described. In 2007, Classic Media, the same distribution company that releases the stop-motion animated Rankin Bass holiday specials, released a glorious DVD of the film that contained both Henry G. Saperstein's US version and E. Shiro Honda's, with an excellent commentary on the US cut by Stuart Galbraith IV. This disc was released under Toho's preferred international title, Invasion of Astro-Monster. Interestingly, when the film was initially released in the US, it was distributed only to American military bases under a closer title than Saperstein's Monster Zero, as Invasion of the Astros. You may insert your baseball jokes here. This confusion over international titles is another bizarre point of light from these movies that provides me with great joy, especially for the German versions. For example, in Germany, Invasion of Astro-Monster is called Command from the Dark. Frankenstein Conquers the World was called Frankenstein, the Terror with the Face of an Ape. Their titles would only get weirder and weirder over time, with later entries like Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster becoming Frankenstein and the Monster from the Sea, and Terror of Mechagodzilla becoming Konga, Godzilla and King Kong, the Devil's Brood. No wonder Toho began making distributors use the international titles. The biggest positive innovation for the giant monster movie genre that Invasion of Astro-Monster has to offer is its humanoid alien invaders crossing over into a kaiju movie. At this point in the genre's history, it's a fresh turn for the story to take. Aliens using giant monsters as a vanguard of invasion? It hadn't been done quite like this before. And while this would become a heavily repeated trope in the series and genre at large, right now it's fresh, shiny, and new. The other innovation is not a good sign in terms of things to come, and that's the use of stock footage in the special effects sequences to fill out the fights and save a buck. City smashing scenes were borrowed from Ghidorah the three-headed monster in the original Rodan. There's good and bad on the horizon for Godzilla, and we're saying sayonara to him for this season of Record All Monsters, but he'll be back. And there are still a handful of movies left before we wrap up the season in earnest, so we will also be back. This movie is kind of the finale for the King of the Monsters' golden age, and I feel good leaving him here on a high note.
Did he kill Rodan and Godzilla?
He couldn't. They're too tough.
Hello, I'm Robert Kelly, host and writer of Record All Monsters, and this is an ad for Anchor. That's right, it's an ad for Anchor, and if you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. I was really intimidated at first to start this show until I heard about Anchor, and there were a few things that made me feel more at ease to begin. First of all, it's free. They have creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer, and Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so that it can be heard on a number of platforms, including whichever one you're listening to it on right now. You can even make a little money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. And even their ads are easy. The mandatory call to action is something I can state freely. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Doesn't that feel good? This has been an ad for Anchor, and I've been Robert Kelly, host and writer of Record All Monsters.
Now, giant entertainment, giant terror, the war of the gargantuan, and Monster Zero.
Do you see anything?
From a planet 50 million miles beyond the stars came a strange message. Lend us your Rodan and Godzilla to fight our Monster Zero. Earth answered, and the most dreaded creatures ever to walk our planet are lifted into outer space. The stage is set for the mightiest battle ever seen by the universe in Monster Zero.
All forces on Earth ready to attack.
What started out as a call for help from space turns into a nightmare of terror on Earth, Monster Zero. And the war of the gargantuan. It began with a mysterious, wild storm at sea, and before the night was over, the whole world would hear of the terror of the gargantuan. Where had such a monster come from? What forces created such a devastating destroyer? Who or what could stand up to it? Let him have it. Armies fought the monster with million-volt laser beams. Hey, look! Another one! You'll see all of their terrifying battle to the death when you come to the greatest monster movies ever made, The War of the Gargantuas and Monster Zero.
Godzilla.
Hello, I'm Robert Kelly. Welcome back to Record All Monsters. We're here with friend of the show and recently Monster Kid Hall of Fame inductee, Derek M. Cook of Monster Kid Radio. Welcome, Derek.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. So we're here today to talk about Invasion of Astro-Monster, as Toho wants us to call it now, but I think most of us grew up with it as Monster Zero or Godzilla versus Monster Zero. Mm-hmm. So first of all, Derek, what did you think of this particular movie?
So I think I talked a little bit about this last time I was on your show about my journey to kaiju fandom or through kaiju fandom. I didn't really grow up with these movies. I mean, I knew what they were. I knew what Godzilla was, but I didn't really watch these movies from start to finish until I'd say sometime within the past decade. And then I really just dove in, thanks to Kyle Yount over the Kaiju Cast and that sort of thing. So since then, I've mainlined them all. I've seen all the Godzilla movies and all that, and they're pretty recent watches for me. I mean, within the past 7 or 8 years or so. This one's one of my favorite ones because it's got Nick Adams, and Nick Adams, my guy. You know, if Monster Kid Radio had patron saints, I always say it's Karloff, Lugosi, and John Agar. But Nick Adams is real close to the top there too. If I can't have John Agar, I want Nick Adams. So he's awesome. And this movie actually is really cool. It's got a lot of really neat design elements to it. The performances are great. Introduction of the big bad is fantastic. So yeah, I'm a big fan of this one.
It's good to hear. I thought you might be. That's part of why I wanted to ask you on for this episode, because I know you're a big fan of like time capsule aspect of these older monster movies.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And this retro futurism, I know, is something you've talked about. Like you did an episode recently on your show about Moon Zero 2.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the things y'all were talking about, was just this idea of what the future was going to look like. How does this future strike you?
They don't really actually say where this one is, right? In terms of the time, it's like 1960 something, right?
6X, I believe, is what the
what is that?
Like anything between 1960 and 1969, I guess. 1960X.
No, I like it. I like that. You know, there's this kind of hopeful. Yeah, we'll be to Mars by then. You know, yeah, we're going back and forth to the moon. No big deal. You know, I like that kind of approach to where they thought we might be.
Yeah.
We didn't get there, but
no.
You know.
Yeah, and you were talking about Nick Adams earlier. What did you you know, he has this kind of detour in his career near the end of it, where he was doing the Japanese movies. Our previous episode was on Frankenstein Conquers the World.
Yeah.
And it's actually a very different performance from him here versus that film. Have you seen Frankenstein Conquers the World? I think we talked about it before, but
Have I seen Frankenstein? Yes, of course. Yes, I have. And I like that movie a lot too. I actually like the one we're talking about today a little bit better. But you're right. I think it's real easy to look at Nick Adams, especially in these two films, and be like, well, you know, it's Nick Adams doing Nick Adams. But they really are two different characters, and he was a really good actor. Even with something like this, I don't know what he felt about these movies, what he felt about his career at the time or whatever, but he's not phoning it in. I mean, he's giving us two distinct characters between this film and Frankenstein Conquers the World, for sure.
yeah, I really, so because I just watched both of these movies very recently, and just kind of this like almost rock and roll attitude in this movie and his performance.
That's a really good way to put it. I like that. That's good.
Just the way he's talking to Kumi Mizuno when she's like, we can run away and we'll get married on Planet X. We're gonna fight down to the last man, baby.
That's right.
Versus his role in Frankenstein, where he's just kind of like he's still putting himself into it. He's still having fun, but he's playing a doctor, so he's acting like a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And I think especially with because for me, I grew up seeing Invasion of Astro-Monster and The Rebel.
Okay, yeah.
So he was just always kind of this slick, easygoing guy.
Mm-hmm.
So seeing this other side of him in Frankenstein was neat.
Yeah. Yeah, trying to transpose what he did in The Rebel, like I totally, into something like this, I totally see that now that you say it. Obviously as a monster kid,
mm-hmm.
I'm going to be drawn to his genre stuff, whether it's these two kaiju films or Mission Mars or Die Monster Die or something like that. But he did so much more, and it's too bad he wasn't able to do more. That he passed so early. But yeah, The Rebel, listeners, if you haven't seen The Rebel, it's not monsters at all, but it's got some really good performances in it.
It does. And the theme song wasn't always the sung version on the show by Johnny Cash, but that's worth seeking out too.
Mm-hmm.
So also in this movie, we have one of your favorite kaiju, Rodan. How do you feel about Rodan in this movie, how he's done?
like you said, Rodan's one of my favorites, and I think my favorite Rodan appearance in any of the kaiju films, it's got to be the film Rodan, because I feel like as time went along, they kind of softened the edges of a lot of these kaiju characters. They're not monsters per se anymore. They're more, on the side of sort of on the side of good, I guess. Lesser of two evils, and I don't know. But I like Rodan in this. I'm glad it was Rodan and not Mothra that they cut, or that they didn't cut, excuse me, because they ended up cutting Mothra out of the whole thing, right?
Yeah. They were initially going to have basically a rematch of the previous Godzilla movie.
Mm-hmm.
And for budgetary reasons, this is also the first movie, I think, where they used stock footage during the effect sequences.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right.
Someone I'd talked to, or I'd read somewhere, said that they were okay with the changes made to Rodan between this his initial film and these two, because it was like if they had recast James Cagney with Don Knotts or something like that.
Well, that's yeah.
Get something completely different, but it's a different kind of movie. So
it changes look a little bit, sure, but if and this, you watch these movies a lot. Your show's kind of named after it. Even Godzilla changes from movie to movie a little bit, so the changes are just part of it.
And that's something I actually advocate, just because it's fun. Like you're watching the movie, you're like, when I was a kid, I didn't notice it, but as I got older, you'd see, oh, Godzilla looks like his eyes are smaller on this one, and he's not quite as like pointy here, and
sure.
It's just a fun aspect. And then, of course, as a collector, it's just another thing that you get to / have to buy.
Well, and it's something that they still do to this day, I assume. You look at the slasher movies of the 80s, for example. Every time they did a Nightmare on Elm Street, they redesigned Freddy's makeup. Every time they did a Friday the 13th, it was a different mask. Even if it was the same guy, same mask in the film, it was a different mask. So it's just something that they do, and you accept it and kind of roll with it and buy the new action figure.
Exactly. Those are all the prepared questions I have. Was there anything that stuck out to you?
I love the Zillions. I love the Zillions.
The Zillions, I think, it's just one of those really subtle, iconic sci-fi aliens, and you can only do so much with making your people aliens. So how are you going to differentiate them? And so much of this in the performance, Yoshio Tsuchiya was the controller of Planet X, and he just does such a good job uh just acting alien. There's no humanity in his performance.
Pretty blank faced, pretty kind
Yeah.
of I don't know if robotic's the best way to put it, but he's got a very cold demeanor about him. So even when he's not talking, he's just kind of standing there, and or before he reacts to anything, he still has that kind of veneer of alienness, which, man, these movies have so much. It's not. Yeah, we watch them because we like the guy in the monster suit smashing models, but there's so much more going on here, and I really think that the alien portrayal here, the Zillions, are some of the scariest alien or otherworldly beings that they've put on screen in these films.
Oh, absolutely.
They just look great.
They look great. They're well acted, and then just the way they're like, here we've taken this problem off your hands with the monsters, and you've helped us with our monster, and now here's this gift, this payment, and it's a trap. And honestly, the movie does a good job. Like, if you're watching this blind, like completely blind, and you don't know what a Godzilla movie is,
Right.
I can see. I mean, I got taken for a ride when I was a kid when I first saw it. I was like, how could they betray them? How could...
Yep.
I mean, it's super telegraphed, when you were watching it with any background in storytelling, but it's still so much fun. And the brother-in-law, Tetsuo, the
Yeah.
inventor, his noise device, the Chekhov's noise device.
Chekhov's noise. I like that. Yeah.
Just because I was just saying how, of course you can see the twist of the aliens coming, but that's a genuine payoff,
Sure.
like in the way it's written, and it's something that I actually, when I started watching these movies again as an adult, had forgotten about that was the payoff of that.
I think sometimes it's not handled the best with some of these films. It's not a Japanese film, but like the Itching Powder and Yongari isn't.
Yeah.
It's very obvious and not handled very subtly.
Mm-hmm.
But like in something like this, sure, it works. And I like it. I mean, it's not just, hey, we're going to beat up the monster until he goes away. There's something else to drive the monster away. That's not just push him into another building, and I appreciate that. There's one thing about this film that does, to this day, impress me. The first time I saw it, can't remember when it was, but not too long ago. And every time I've gone back to watch it, I almost always forget this happens in the film, and it always takes me aback. Like, well, wait a minute, they just killed the romantic lead.
Yes.
Wow, that's. That's some real bravery with the storytelling, I think.
Well, and it's funny because when that happens, you kind of feel like it's early in the movie, but it makes you reevaluate. Like, no, we're heading into the final act. Like, this is okay. Yeah, everything's going down now.
Yeah, they aren't messing around. They're really doing this, and every time that happens, and Nick, or I guess Glenn, the way Glenn reacts to it, man, that's rough, man. And like I said, the bravery and the storytelling. I know that at this point the Godzilla movies haven't gone completely, let's sell it to the kids first and foremost, but I can't imagine that being overly palatable to a child audience.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because this was one of my favorite ones to rent when I was a kid, and just watching as an adult, I'm always kind of baffled as to why. Like, I still like it a lot, but when I was a kid, I was just like, I don't there's like maybe 5 minutes of monsters in this whole movie. Like, what held my attention when I was 7?
And let that be a lesson to everybody who complains about there not being enough monsters in the modern Godzilla movies.
Oh, for sure.
You
For
go back and
sure.
you watch these movies, and there's very little Godzilla action in a lot of them. Um, and this is one of them. I mean, there's some good monster stuff, but there's
Very
so
good.
much happening with the human and the zillions and everything else too.
Have you seen the latest one, Godzilla versus Kong yet?
I did. It was my first. Uh, it was my return to seeing a movie in a movie theater, actually. So after over a year of being away from the theaters because of what's going on in the world, my buddy Jeff, who does the Star Trek A Talk Time portion of the Monster Kid Astronomy Club streaming that we did on Tuesday, he got a hold of me and said, "We're going to see Kong versus Godzilla. I'll be there to pick you up." Like, okay. I guess when a friend says we're going to go see Kong and be Godzilla, you're going to go see Kong be Godzilla. But yeah, I did end up seeing it, and it was pretty majestic to see it on the big screen. I'm trying to divorce my feelings about going to a movie theater again and seeing a movie with friends, with people, from the film itself, so that I could evaluate the film on it by its own merits. But I think it's going to be forever linked to sitting there with my buddy Jeff and his partner, and it was a ride, man. It really. Have you seen it?
Yes. No. I saw it the night it opened. We have a drive-in here locally,
Oh
and I
man, that
had
would have been great. Oh,
the next day off work, so Courtney and I just went down to the drive-in, and we had a really good time. And then we saw it twice at the drive-in. We met some friends that weekend. It was fun. It's a good drive-in movie.
sure. It's a real spectacle and roller coaster of a film. There's a few scenes where it felt like they could take this shot, this sequence, and dump it into like a motion simulator ride at an amusement park, because it
Yeah.
feels just like that. Yeah. Um,
I was
it was
honestly
cool. Yeah.
go ahead.
I was gonna say, and it was cool to see Skarsgård play somebody who wasn't dark and brooding.
Yes,
So
just kind of a normal, slightly sad guy.
yeah.
So I did have one more question. I just
Okay.
found. Do you usually watch these older movies, Derek, with subtitles or dubbed?
Uh, so when I first did my journey through all of these films, I tried to do them all subtitled if I could get my hands on them that way. Wasn't always successful at the time. Now, since then, with that awesome Criterion set that came out, you can watch it with the subtitles. But I do try to watch the dubs too, because I know sometimes it's just a little different. Some of the story beats are presented a little differently. Some details are a little different. Like with this one, it's curing cancer versus curing all diseases, that sort of thing. I prefer the subtitles just because I'm a purist, and I like to make sure I'm getting everything that the filmmakers intended. But that I don't want to get that. Well, I watched this. I don't want to get I don't want to get too far, pointing my nose up too far. But the dubbed ones are fun. And if I'm going to put the movie on in the background while I'm doing something else, like some chores or folding laundry or whatever, then I'll put it on dubbed, because I won't be able to be watching the screen the entire time. What about you?
I actually tend to lean toward the dubs because in the case of a lot of these movies, I grew up with them. That's the comfort food version of it for me.
Okay.
However, when I'm writing the episodes, the essay portion, I'll usually watch the subtitled version so that I can get the sense of what was intended in
Sure.
its initial release. Because generally that's the version I'm commentating on.
Sure. Yeah, I think with the earlier films in the Toho Kaiju run, they tried real hard to make sure the dub matched the mouth movements a little bit more than they did as time went on. So you get things like banana oil and things like that. So whereas it's not as important to them as it moves further, but it's still fun. And I can totally see that. It makes perfect sense that, you want to return to that state when you first were watching them.
Yeah, that's just how they're the most fun for me. But often in some cases, it does not matter if they're dubbed or subtitled, like Godzilla versus Megalon.
I love that one. So I love that one so much.
I love it too. It's actually one of my very favorites, unironically.
Yep.
Just a delightful movie, but it doesn't make a difference to me in that case because it's the dubbed version doesn't even the version that's available on the Criterion set or the DVD if you can find it. It's just straight up dubbed. There's no cuts. There's no edits.
Mm-hmm.
I
mean, in the end, I feel like if we're fans of these movies, we already speak the language of kaiju. So
yes.
Does it really matter all that much? Probably not. I say the same thing about the Luchador movies that I talk about on Monster Kid Radio. They're not dubbed or subtitled most of the time, so you just kind of have to infer and hope you can speak the language of Lucha in that case, So.
Well, and speaking of Lucha de Mayo, which at the time of this recording has just wrapped up, great choices. Honestly, I had a lot of fun this year with 3 Devadam and
oh boy, that one.
Zoltan or Zoltar?
Zovek. Professor Zovek. Yes.
Zovek and Blue Demon.
Yes. 3 Devadam. Man, that one. I don't know if you're a big comic book guy, but Marvel has their universes are numbered, right? The normal or the regular comic books that you would pick up at the store typically are in the 616 universe, and they've got different designations for each iteration of the Marvel comic stories. The Marvel Cinematic Universe has a number. All these different What If titles have different numbers or whatever. I want to know what the number is for 3 Devadam.
I was about to ask you, please tell me that there's a numbered universe for 3 Devadam.
I don't know. I mean, they have one for the Japanese Spider-Man or Spider-Man. I know that's canon at this point. That Spider-Man has turned up in mainstream Marvel comics, and it's amazing. So,
well, this is actually a great way to transition into our game. So we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to play. It seems like you're always on for an edition of our game, What's in a Name, Derek?
Okay, that's all right. We'll do it. I'm excited.
All right, so when we get back, the alien edition of What's in a Name.
Prepare for a spine-tingling, nerve-shattering podcast featuring all your favorite monsters. You won't believe your ears when you listen to Monster Kid Radio. Hear your host, Derek M. Cook, and his ever-rotating stable of guests discuss your favorite classics and sometimes not-so-classic monster movies. Subscribe to Monster Kid Radio through iTunes or Stitcher, or visit monsterkidradio.net before the next weekly episode of Monster Kid Radio. Go through the archives for interviews with Sarah Karloff, Victoria Price, and Joel Hodgson. Listen to discussions about movies like Creature from the Black Lagoon, Island of Terror, and King Kong. And don't forget convention coverage from Monster Bash and the H.P. Lovecraft Film Festival, Classic Monsters, Modern Talk, and the Head of Rondo Hatton, only on Monster Kid Radio.
Hello and welcome back once again to Record All Monsters, where we are still here with host, writer, and producer of Monster Kid Radio, friend of the show, and once again Monster Kid Hall of Fame inductee, Derek M. Cook. I'm gonna keep introducing you as that.
I'm still, it's still kind of stunning. I was on a coffee date this morning with somebody, and I was telling her about it, and it still doesn't feel real. I know the ceremony's already happened. I don't have the plaque yet. It's still in the mail. I don't think it'll feel real until I actually have it in my hands, but thank you. I appreciate it.
And congratulations on that, by the way. It's just, like Courtney and I were excited. We were watching the live stream, or I guess it was like being typed out, but when we saw that, we cheered a little bit.
Oh, yeah, I was stunned. I didn't know what to say. So, which is the worst position to be in as a podcaster, to not have words, to communicate what you're thinking. But I don't know. Just when these things happen, it's like, I suppose you always dream about being recognized for this kind of stuff, but then when it actually happens, You draw. I just draw in blanks. So.
Well, I mean, I can't even imagine. I had a heart attack when I found out I was nominated for a Rondo.
Which is totally cool, man. Well, you guys deserve it. I know you're still a young podcast, in terms of like the podcasts get nominated and whatever. But, and I swear this isn't my intention to come onto your show and turn it into the Mutual Admiration Society, but I really dig what you do, man. I love the guests. I love the point of view. I love the essays that you do. It's an important voice in kaiju fandom, and I hope you keep doing it for a long, long time.
Well, thank you very much, Derek. And you can come on to my show and praise me anytime you want, and I'll and I'll praise you too.
Okay.
So, the game. Today's movie introduced intelligent humanoid aliens to the Godzilla franchise through a race from Planet X called Zillions. This is an objectively silly and wonderful name for a race of aliens, and it got me thinking about other pop culture aliens with weird and funny names. So I decided to make some up and make you guess which ones are real and which ones I invented for the specific purposes of this game. You must do so under the penalty of death. Just kidding.
Whoa. Okay.
There are no prizes or penalties, and I may have done the death penalty one already. So, are you ready, Derek?
The stakes just got really high. Remember all that buttering up I did a second ago? Keep that in mind, okay?
Are you ready, Derek?
I am as ready as I'll ever be, man. Let's do this. Right.
Question 1.
Uh-huh.
Are Luphomoids a real pop culture alien race?
Luphomoids?
Luphomoids.
Yeah. Why do I feel like that sounds a little familiar? I feel like it sounds familiar, but I couldn't tell you where from, so I'm going to say yes, it's real.
They are a real pop culture alien race,
yes!
Derek.
Okay.
The Luphomoids are an alien race from Marvel Comics.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
One notable member of which is Nebula from the Guardians of the Galaxy.
There we go. Okay, good. Whew, I think I'm doing better than I ever have on this game before. I got one.
Question 2.
Yes.
Are Margs a real pop culture alien race?
Margs. Man, see, you're good at this because you come up with some names and titles and such that sound like they could be real, and that one sounds like it could be real too. Yeah, I'm going to say yeah. Yes.
Okay, well, they're not. You're so far. They are not a real pop culture alien race, but they are what some people call margaritas, a delicious Mexican cocktail with origins that are foggy at best.
That's not why it sounded familiar to me, I swear.
I have a friend who his last name starts with Marg, and I have irritated him in the past by calling him Margs.
Okay.
That's where that comes from.
Okay.
All right. Okay, question 3. Are Quarrens a real pop culture alien race? Quarrens.
Oh, yes, because they are, this is actually one of my favorite alien species from Star Wars. This is a little squid head dudes, right?
Yes, sir.
I actually used to play one in a role-playing game many, many, many years ago. It was in an online MUD, which was like an interactive text-based game with a whole bunch of people and all that. And I didn't know what to name my character, so I just spelled James Kirk backwards. And of course, every time I'd walk into a room, somebody would be like, "Oh, that's great." Yes, I love the squid head dudes. They were actually one of my favorite action figures too.
Oh, that's fantastic! Yeah, they're from the planet Mon Calamari and share it with the Mon Calamari, who are also squid-headed aliens.
For a while, man. Okay, I'll tell the story. So I used to draw a lot as a kid. I don't do it much anymore, but when I was a kid, especially whenever I visited my grandparents, for whatever reason, they liked to buy me art supplies. So, we fly down to Arizona, go to Grandma and Grandpa's house, bunch of paper, bunch of colored pencils and whatever, and I'm drawing. And I drew a squid head. And back then, they were just called squid heads. They weren't called anything. Mm-hmm. And I was explaining what the tentacles on the face were. But for whatever reason, my brain didn't say, I got the word tentacle and testicle mixed up. So when I was trying to show my grandma, what these 4 testicles hanging off his face. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Uh-huh.
That's good. I'm going to keep that in. That's good.
For the record, I know the difference now.
And parents, if you're listening with your kids, I'll leave that up to you how to explain the difference. All right, question 4. Are the Zetoxians a real pop culture alien race? Zetoxians.
Zetoxians. Start with a Z or an X?
With a Z.
Zetoxians. It sounds like it should be, so I'm going to say yes.
You're correct, Derek.
Yes.
They are.
All right.
The Zetoxians are the progenitors of the Great Gazoo from the Flintstones cartoons.
That's right. That's right. I love Gazoo.
And you've gotten 3 questions right, and we only have 5, so you've already won. This next one's just a victory lap. All right. Are Alpha Beta Men a real pop culture alien race?
Alpha Beta Men.
Alpha Beta Men.
Beta Men. I know Betazoids, and Alpha would be... No, you know what? I'm going to say no this time.
Derek, you got it right. You're 4 for 5.
Really?
I
Nice.
made them up. If they were real, they would be a race subservient to Doomsday from Jack Kirby's New Gods comics and be shaped like letters of the alphabet. They would also feature in Zack Snyder's recut of the Justice League, so you have to take them seriously, okay?
Oh, that's good. Oh, man, I'm tearing up. That's awesome.
And that's it, Derek. You won. 4 out of 5.
Wow. I will never hit that level again. This is the best I'll ever do. I'm sure.
Well, we hope you have many chances to come back on and prove yourself wrong and win the game a bunch more times.
I would love to come back, man. I love talking about this stuff with people who love it just as much, if not more than me. So be happy to do so.
Well, and so this is coming up. This episode's near the end of our first season, and we are going to take a break kind of over the fall. But we do want to have you back in our second season. I've actually got a specific film we've already discussed on your show, I think, in mind.
Okay.
So leave that as a teaser in here. I think you know what I'm talking about.
I'm all in, man.
All right, Derek. So that's all I got for you. Do you want to let the people know any projects you've got coming up? Or
Oh, so many. So in terms of podcasting, monsterkidradio.net's the home base. That's where everything is for the podcast. And yeah, I mean, that's really where you're going to want to go. I've also do the movie streams on Twitch. So if you look up Monster Kid Radio on twitch.tv, on Saturdays, we do a big block of of monster programming. On Tuesday, we do science fiction programming, as well as a little Star Trek discussion as well at the very end of that. And then on a personal front, I've got different writing projects in the works, some role-playing game material in the works, just a lot going on. I know you were on YouTube doing a read of the Avengers, right? Yes. In fact, that's actually what I'm going to be working on later on tonight after we get done recording, is editing another episode of that, where I'm looking at the Avengers comic books going back to the 60s. And the intention is to do an episode of this YouTube series kind of looking at each one of those issues. And if I'm able to pull that off, it means I'm going to be on YouTube for a good 10, 15 years because there's so many. But it's fun. I love the Avengers so much. I loved them before they were cool. You know.
Where can they find that one in particular? Because I had a fun time with that, and I lost it on my YouTube somehow.
So if you look up Comicstalgia on YouTube, so it's like nostalgia, but just Comicstalgia. I don't have enough subscribers yet to get the customized URL yet, but I'm working on it. And that series is just now starting up. I wanted to launch it earlier. I had some issues come up, but now things are looking like it's a go. So.
Yeah,
Comicstalgia.
That's a lot of fun. What I've been able to catch of that, and
thanks, man.
It was a lot of fun. So, and we'll have you back soon. And thank you so much once again. And congratulations on your induction into the Hall of Fame.
Hey, thanks. I really appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Once again, I want to thank Derek for coming on to the show. He's been so helpful, so supportive of what we do here at Record All Monsters. And yesterday on his show, Monster Kid Radio, which you know is what it's called, and I know what it's called, I was a guest. It was kind of a last-minute thing. And so I was on Monster Kid Radio yesterday, and we had a lot of fun. We talked about the Monsterverse and just kind of our experiences with those movies and what we thought about them. I guess my opinion of them is no secret at this point. But we have a lot of fun. It's just kind of an easygoing, kind of rambling chat about the movies. And he does a great job keeping us on topic. That's one thing for sure. And of course, over there we play the Classic Five, a game I love very much. In our show notes here, our description, I have his link tree set up, as well as the specific link to that Comicstalgia YouTube video I was talking about. It's just the first issue of the Avengers right now, but it's really interesting, and Derek has a great take on that, like he seems to on everything. So, once again, thank you to Derek. And thank you to Courtney. She wasn't on this episode, but she still does so much just to help me out, keeping me on track, on task, making sure I keep writing the essays. I'm writing the essays for season 2 right now. She's making sure that I'm writing them. And so next week we'll be having the VHS memory special. And the week after that, we'll have our language consultant, Andre Hata, on for the episode on the Magic Serpent. And if you want to have something read on the VHS special, you can send us an email at recordallmonsterspod@gmail.com, or you can send us a message on any of our social media apps. We have Twitter, where we're at Monsters Record. We have Instagram, where we're at recordallmonsters.pod. And on Facebook, if you search Record All Monsters Podcast, we pop right up. And finally, we still have the Gargantuan Gamera giveaway going on for a few more episodes. Go back and listen to that episode, find the secret word, and comment it on any of our social media pages. If you comment on all 3 social media pages, that's 3 entries into the giveaway. If you comment on 2, that's 2 entries. If you comment on 1, that's 1 entry. So, you want to win those Gamera discs. You gotta comment on all 3. We've had 1 person comment on all 3 so far. That may change by the time this goes out. But with all of that said, there was one more thing I wanted to announce. Yes, we are going on a hiatus, quote-unquote, between the end of Season 2 and the start of Season... between the end of Season 1 and the start of Season 2. I'm very tired. And during that time, I will not abandon you. We'll be releasing in intervals chapters as audio book of the King Kong novelization from 1932, which is in the public domain. So, you have that to look forward to. Been starting working on that. So between now and next week when we go through the Godzilla VHS special, remember that monsters are your friends.